Welcome back to the daily Living Jewish Kitzur Shulchan Aruch class. We are up to section 71 of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We'll start with our regular look at the PowerPoint to see where we are up to. We are learning section 71, which speaks about the order of the night. So we've gone through the day. We've started the day right, we've davened, we've learned, we've acted well, we've eaten, we've made brachos, we've done business, and now it's time to go to sleep. So we make sure to daven mincha, as we spoke about yesterday, a little while back. We spoke about Ma'ariv, which are the evening prayers. And tonight we're going to speak about, this evening, right now, we're going to speak about the order of the night. And there are, once again, 5 halachas. Let's take a look at the text. One moment. Oh, this is too small. We're getting set up over here. I have to figure this out better. So we'll start with nighttime Torah study. After completing the Ma'ariv prayer, a person should set aside a time for Torah study. Now, this doesn't mean that it's the first time you should be learning something. Rather, the Torah says you shall meditate it day and night. So hopefully, when you davened in the morning, after davening, you had a morning class, a morning session of Torah learning.
Your volume is very low. You can't hear.
Oh. Can you hear, John? Okay. Maybe you can raise your volume.
Yes, I can hear you.
I can too.
Okay, so I hope you could sort it out, Moshe. I'm going to keep going for the meantime. So just as when we wake up in the morning and we daven, after davening we should designate some time to study Torah, well, the same goes for the evening. After we daven Ma'ariv, once it's night, we should also set a time to study some Torah, each person according to their ability. And you should recognize the fact that if you eat first, if you're going to say, let me first sit down for dinner, people haven't changed for a very long time. This already goes back to the Shulchan Aruch for a couple of 100 years. You're going to say, let me first eat something. You might be overcome by sleep since you're tired. And nature will demand rest. Nature will be calling you to sleep. This will cause you to neglect Torah study, missed opportunity. Therefore, you should take care to set aside a time for study before you sit down for dinner. However, if you're hungry and famished because you didn't eat enough by day, you can have a snack so that your mind is at ease and then study a little. And then after that, you can eat your meal to satisfaction and then resume your Torah study. Okay, so you say that after the night begins, you daven Ma'ariv and then learn something. If you're feeling hungry, then you can eat something first and then learn and then have a proper meal and then you can continue to learn long into the night. Now, by the way, interestingly, when it comes to learning at night, one shouldn't just read the Torah, just verses from the Torah at night. Some say if it's accompanied by a commentary like Rashi, then it's fine. But there is a concept of not studying just words of Torah alone at night based on Kabbalah. In fact, there's a tradition that when Moses was on Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, So he was there for 40 days and 40 nights. How was he able to tell the difference between day and night? So based on what the Torah that the Jewish people were learning down at the bottom of the mountain, he wasn't able to see if it was day or night, but he was able to see the Torah study. And based on what they were studying, he was able to get an idea what time of day it was, which is quite interesting. Our sages of blessed memory said, night was created solely for study, meaning that there's something special about a night. What's the exact lashon? Something that the night was only created in order to be able to sit and learn, because during the night, the sun sets, the streets become quiet, everything becomes quiet. So what can you do then? You can take out your candle, but nowadays turn on a light, and undisturbed, you could sit and you could learn for hours. During the day, you've got to make a living, there's lots of distractions, but the nighttime was created to study Torah. That's what the Talmud says, referring specifically to the long winter nights. Nevertheless, even in the shorter nights, in the summer, when the sun sets later, you should study a little each night to fulfill the verse, and you shall meditate in it day and night. From the 15th day of the month of Av and on, so in the northern hemisphere, that's when it starts getting colder, or when the sun starts setting earlier. You should gradually add to your study period. So as the sun sets earlier and things quiet down earlier, you should utilize that time to study Torah. Rish Lakish said, whoever is engrossed with Torah study at night, a cord of grace is strung around him by day. Shel Chesed. Or, as it says, he said it based on the verse, by day Hashem will command his grace over us, and at night his song is with me. This can be interpreted, for what reason will Hashem command his grace over us? Because his song is with me at night. So the merit of us being with Hashem's song, with Hashem's Torah at night, the merit of us studying Torah at night, it shines a positive light, a ray of light unto the day. Others say, Rish Lakish said, whoever is engrossed in Torah study in this world, which is called night, when things are dark, Hashem strings about him a cord of grace in the world to come, which is referred to as day. So either it means literally, whoever studies at night will have Hashem's grace during the day, or it also means spiritually speaking, whoever studies Torah in this night, in this dark exile, will merit to have the light of Hashem when Mashiach comes very soon, or in the world to come. Certainly, one who has set a time to study every day and was determined during the day should compensate for his commitment at night. Oh, so certainly if you have a daily time to learn, and for whatever reason you had, I don't know, a doctor's appointment, a guest coming from out of town, a flat tire, whatever it may be that deterred you from your daily Torah study during the day, if you missed it, then you shouldn't go to sleep at night before making up for it. Torah study is what gives food to our neshamas. Our neshamas need the Torah study in order to be nourished. Okay. Okay, so now that we've spoken about Torah study, we move on to eating supper and going to sleep. It is advisable for a normal, healthy person to eat moderately at his evening meal, and it should be lighter than the meal he eats by day. And he's going to give 4 reasons for this, which is maybe why I think in Israel, the lunch meal is actually a bigger meal than the supper meal. I think people in Israel have a larger lunch and a smaller supper. Is that correct, Moshe? I think so. I think in Israel they have a big lunch and a small supper. So why shouldn't you eat too big a supper at night? Firstly, he says it's healthy not to go to sleep on a full stomach. Secondly, it will prevent sinful things, namely that it not leads to nocturnal emissions, which are caused by excessive eating and drinking things that warm the body. It says if a person overeats just before he goes to sleep, it could cause his body in the digestive system to become more heated up and cause him to release seed, which is something that we want to avoid. We want any suit that we have to be used in the context of a mitzvah. Thirdly, his dreams will be pleasant and calm because excessive eating and drinking causes nightmares. When a person's digestive system's up in the air, then it actually affects his dreams, believe it or not. And finally, he will not sleep too heavy and will be able to wake up at the proper time. If you had a gesundte meal, a serious meal, then you might make you sleep in. Again, your body is busy working through all of that food that you ate. So based on those 4 reasons, rather make your supper a lighter meal. Then he says that it's sufficient for a healthy person to sleep 6 hours, which is very interesting because the Rambam speaks about sleeping 8 hours. So interestingly, he speaks about sleeping 6. The bottom line is that it depends on the person. There's no set measure of sleep for all people. Each person's health and needs require their own amount. Nevertheless, one should not indulge himself in too much sleep. So he says it's sufficient 6 hours. The Rambam says 8 hours. But we didn't come down into this world to sleep. Finally, this is a very interesting point over here that he says, you should be careful not to sleep in a room alone and not to sleep in a place that is too hot and not in a place that is too cold. So when he says not to sleep in a room alone, actually in the Shulchan Aruch, the original term is not to sleep in a house alone. Some people say that when they said house, that it actually meant a room, but we are worried about negative mazikim, kind of like destructive energies, destructive angels that could have that could be hurtful to the person, and either having light in the room or having company in the room makes the person a lot safer. So there's an idea of not going outside at night alone unless there's light or you have other people with you. And the same also for sleeping. It's better not to sleep alone, better to have someone with you, or otherwise to leave a little bit of light on. Okay, he doesn't mention that here, but that's what the commentaries say. Now, this concept, we mentioned quite a few interesting concepts over here in halacha number 2. We've spoken about protecting oneself from what happens while one's sleeping, and for protecting oneself from these mazikim, these negative energies, negative angels. So we're going to see that this is actually quite a theme, that as long as we're awake, we're in control, we're soldiers, we're fighting. But there is a concern that we want all of our being to be in a positive space, in a healthy space, physically and spiritually. And therefore, as the day comes to a close, we place a focus on wanting to surround ourselves with light, with goodness, with Torah, to protect us from not being in any way physically or spiritually compromised while we're sleeping, when we're not in our full senses. Moving on to halacha number 3. It is proper for every God-fearing man, before going to sleep, to examine the deeds that he performed that day, the whole day. If he finds that he committed a sin, he should regret and confess it, and wholeheartedly resolve not to do it again. Especially common transgressions such as flattery, lies, mockery, gossip, they require a careful scrutiny. So this is, should we be caught up in ourselves, continuously doubting whether we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing? No. Everything has a time. If in the middle of the day you're going to start feeling down that you're such a low life, that you sin, that you do this wrong or that wrong, then that's actually just a scheme of the evil inclination to try to dampen your spirits, because once you're not happy, then you could give up. And once you give up, then you could lose the battle. So, but there is a designated time for this. Just before we go to sleep at night, that is an appropriate time to stop and reflect and see how tomorrow could be better. So as long as it's still during the day, now's not a time to be self-absorbed. Now's the time to do things. But when you're going to sleep, you're no longer doing anything. The day's over already. There's nothing more to be done. Now is a good time to stop and think, before you fall asleep, what maybe you did right and what maybe you did wrong, and see how that could be rectified for the following day. And actually, in the Shema, before going to bed, in the Siddur, there are passages there that speak about where a person looks at his behavior and sees how tomorrow can be a better day, or as it goes in Yiddish, morgen, it's ein gar anders. Tomorrow should be totally different. Now, you shouldn't say that in the morning. You should say that at night. In the morning, you got to make sure today is different. When it's night and there's nothing more you can do today, then it's a time to stop and think how tomorrow could be a better day than today. A person should also resolve to forgive any person who sinned against him, so that no person be punished on account of him. For it says in the Talmud, whoever is the cause for another's punishment is not permitted to enter into the presence of the Holy One, blessed be he. He should say 3 times, I forgive whoever I hurt. And afterwards say, Hashem, I forgive. So the idea is, we may have undermined our relationship with Hashem. We may have acted out of line. We want Hashem to forgive us. So before we go to sleep at night, well, every day on the Shabbat goes back to heaven and the day is reviewed. Before we get reviewed by God, we want to be sure to give all of our friends a good review and to forgive anybody that may have wronged us. Okay. Now, as far as davening is concerned, I see it's already 5:19. So please God, tomorrow we will continue with the final 2 points. Not tomorrow. Tomorrow will be just before Shabbos. Please God, on Monday, we'll conclude section 70, discussing the prayers that one recites before going to bed. John, you were asking me about this. We'll speak more about that, please God, next week, as well as finally, once a person removes his clothes and actually gets